My name is Chris Goodheart, and I work for Cenic. I am directing our library initiative, bringing libraries on board. But it's really an honor for me to moderate this panel. It's great to be with two distinguished scientists, and it's also great to advocate for more women in computing and in all scientific fields. So I'm proud to do that. And my job is to introduce the panelists, so I'm going to do that. The first person that we have with us is Marla Meehl, and she is the section head of Network Engineering and Telecommunications for UCAR, which is the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research. But she's also the principal investigator of the project that we're going to be hearing about today, Women in IT Networking at SC. So that sounds like at least 3 or maybe even 5 jobs to me, but she does in fact do those things. And she's actually responsible for a huge group within UCAR and has 17 years of experience managing a whole range of large network projects. Joining her is my colleague at Cenic, Sana Bellamine, one of Cenic's core engineers, so most expert engineers. She joined Cenic in 2009, and from what I understand from my colleagues, distinguished herself and has continued to distinguish herself within Cenic. And she has particular expertise in optical network design. And she recently worked on a huge project and huge priority within Cenic, which was our 100 gigabit backbone. And she made the engineering decisions about optical equipment in consultation with others at Cenic. She's recognized nationally, and she is participating in this NSF-funded collaboration, Women in IT Networking at SC. So we're going to hear about that now.
Thank you, and thanks for hanging in here. One of the last talks of the day. I'm going to give you some intro here as to how I got involved in the WINS project, and hopefully you walk away from this presentation with Sana and I understanding the problem a little bit more, why we're involved in it, and what we really are encouraging people is to think about it in your environment, in your world, and see if there's things that you can also do to help alleviate this problem. So, I am a woman. I've been in a technical career for more than 30 years, as was just introduced. And that this may seem odd. I've seen a pretty consistent 10% of women in my field over those 30 years. But only recently have I really become involved in a couple of these gender efforts. And through those efforts, I have become much more aware of the magnitude and scope of the problem. And you may think, well, if there was 10%, how was I not aware? I was aware, but I don't think I'd really thought about it. I was doing my job. I was trying to move forward. And I've also become much more aware of the value of diversity. I had not studied this. I hadn't researched it. And really why diversity is an important thing. And that is our goal today here, is to make you hopefully a little bit more aware of why diversity is good and how large this problem is. So this chart here is a bit of an eye chart, but what it shows is different professions and degrees granted to women from 1970 to 2012. And I think you can kind of see health professionals, foreign languages, communications are kind of increasing and holding steady. But that arrow is pointing at a gray line that's precipitously declining since the mid-1980s, and that's in degrees in computer science. Interestingly, right below there's engineering, which is slowly increasing and holding fairly steady. And actually, if you look at maths and sciences and physical sciences, those are holding relatively steady, but there's a noticeable decline in computer science and IT specifically. And this chart is provided by the National Center for Women in IT, which is where a lot of this information comes from. But that green section shows that 7% of the professional jobs held in the United States are held by women. But really, 26% are held in IT. And so, again, there's a significant lowering when you go into the IT field. And that red box is really for everybody to be aware of. There's an expectation that there will be a demand by 2022 for 1.2 million jobs in the IT-related fields. And the United States can really only fulfill 39% of those with any of the people available, men and women. So we have a significant problem filling IT jobs coming into the future. And I think most of us are somewhat aware of that as we're hiring and trying to fill those positions today. And then that orange section really shows, again, a different version of that decrease in those gray lines. So 37% of degrees were being received by women in computer science in 1985, and yet only 18% are now received by women in current time. So we've seen, again, that precipitous decline, and there's been a 7% decrease in interest of women going into computer science in recent years. And again, so we're just seeing a disenchantment that's occurring. So again, a lot of this material is from NCWIT. It's a company that's been funded, not-for-profit corporation funded in Boulder, Colorado by the National Science Foundation 10 years ago to specifically look at this problem. So 10 years ago, NSF already knew that there was an issue here. And again, even though women, are half the world's population, we're only playing a small role in the technology that's really driving us for tomorrow. And that lack of capitalizing on those benefits really impacts the diversity that's helping to develop that technology and make it unique for women. I think we heard some talks earlier in this conference about how, again, we value diversity in creating new products. So we really have a vastly untapped talent pool in the IT community. And one of the things I learned, and the research shows, that diverse groups, and I'm mostly talking about women here, but this is really diversity across the boards, women, minorities. Diverse groups solve problems better than homogeneous groups do, and they actually increase the total intelligence of the group solving the problem. They help the ability to solve it and the creativity in solving it. And companies that have the most diversity actually have a 34% higher return on investment. So this is actually, you can see this in the bottom line. You have better team dynamics and productivity. You stay on budget and schedule better, and you get more improved employee performance. People work better in diverse groups. And so this is, again, good for everybody to be aware of, and something, again, I learned and have now become much more aware of. So we have all of these jobs out there. They're great, they're high paying, they're secure, good benefits. So why are women not going into this field? And I'm not going to answer all these questions today. There's a lot of studies going on. There's studies going on all the way through the K through 20s, why women aren't staying in their jobs once they get into their jobs. It's a problem really all the way through the whole path. But a lot of women just aren't exposed to the prospect of computer science jobs and IT jobs, and so they aren't aware of it. In many cases, girls are not encouraged by parents, by teachers, to go into engineering and to computing. If you go into post-secondary, you've never been exposed to it, you don't know about it, you tend not to choose that as your degree that you go into. So it's not even something that you think about. And for the few women that do go into those degrees, then they find themselves as the only female in a class or one of a couple of females in a class, and that can be alienating. And I have cases where I know women who have gone in and been overwhelmed by that fact and switched degrees. And our media does not necessarily portray the whole field of IT particularly well. If you think of the Big Bang Theory, the perpetuation of nerdy, introverted, no social skills is not a great thing to encourage anybody actually to go into IT. So even if you make it through college and you get into a degree, then you can be also alienated in your workforce because in many cases, and I think Sana and I have talked about this, you, again, are one of one or a few women that are actually in that field, and that can be disconcerting. And the other thing I've become much more aware of is unconscious biases. And these aren't men or women, it's all of us have some set of unconscious biases. And they influence our decisions that we make. So the work environment we create, this is coming out in a lot of studies about the Googles and the Amazon, the environment that they set up. How we write job descriptions, it shows out that if you write a job description that has a whole lot of requirements on it that you may or may not actually require, men are much more likely to apply for a job they aren't necessarily highly qualified for. Women will read all those requirements and decide I'm not qualified and just not even apply. So there's a lot of work on how to write better job descriptions that are less onerous to women. How we review resumes. When you look at a resume in a blind resume review, many times people, if they look at a John and they look at a Jill, they will review the Jill much more differently than they review the John, even though it's an exact same resume based on, so there's a lot more work on blind review of resumes. How we do interviews, that again, we have biases that are in there. So how we promote people, and again, this is just an awareness that there's training going on to train people. HR's departments are much more familiar with this now. And so I encourage you actually, if you're interested in this, to go take a look at the NCWIT page. There's many resources for how to write better job descriptions, how to do better interviews. And there's a fundamental shortage of male advocates, and many women have noted that if a male encourages them to either go into a field or to stay in a field, it can make a huge difference to them. And so there's a lot of work going on, and Florence and I were discussing that I'm also involved in the I2 Diversity Initiative, and there will be a session on male advocacy at the I2 Global Summit, because again, I think making males aware that they can make a difference is important. And this isn't just a female problem. It is a societal problem that we really need to tap into this diversity. And I thought the timing when I was starting to work on this was interesting. Mark Zuckerberg and his wife just had a daughter, and he wrote a letter to society, and they're going to actually donate billions of dollars into diversity efforts. And again, not just women diversity, but he notes that promoting equality is about making sure everyone has success and opportunities. And it's for the greatness of human progress. And today we are robbed of the potential of so many have to offer. And this is really looking to educate across society, across socioeconomic levels as well. But I think it speaks to the problem we have with women. So the WINS project specifically that we talked about was a result of a National Science Foundation funding. We approached the National Science Foundation about funding 5 women to attend and work on SCinet, which is what Sana will talk about. This is a partnership between UCAR, the Energy Science Network, DOE, and KINBER, which is the Pennsylvania Regional Optical Network, which Wendy Huntoon and I have worked together for many years. And it is an effort to try and diversify that volunteer staff, which again tends to be heavily male-dominated, and provide some opportunities for some highly qualified women to hopefully work on some things they don't get to work on every day. And one of the other things we're really working on is expanding what we're calling the professional network, because it really helps to have people out there that you know and can talk to and get input from. So the specific team was Mary Hester, Wendy Huntoon, me, Lauren Rotman, and Jason Zerkowski. Jason has been a great partner. It was actually fabulous to have a male involved. Due to other commitments, he's going to pull off of the team going forward, and Kate Mace from ESNet is going to step on to the next round. We got 19 highly qualified candidates, which we thought was great for the first time round of this for 5 slots. And they were all great candidates, very, very highly qualified. We asked a team to review those that was made up of Wendy, Grade Bell, John Hernandez, who works with me, Jennifer Schopp, and Linda Winkler, all prestigious people and have worked on supercomputing. And the awardees are these 5 women: Sana from Cenic, Debbie Fligor from Illinois, Amy Leibowitz from University of Michigan, Meg Sorensen from Idaho State, and Kathy West from Indiana. So we had good geographic disparity, and we had good university size, and we also had one of the regionals represented. So I thought we ended up with a really nice team. And it was highly successful from our perspective, but also from the SC leadership, the mentors. Each awardee had a mentor. The awardees gave us very good feedback as well. We did surveys of both the mentors and the awardees. And again, one of the things in the proposal was do these report outs to try and raise awareness and make other people aware of what we're trying to do and some of the issues. So I manage a WestNet meeting, so we've already done that report out. Quilt is a consortium of regional optical networks. We did a report out there in February, and then this is the Cenic meeting. But we'll also present at KINBER, Merit, and the I2 Global Summit. There will be a diversity panel where Jason will specifically address this as well. And we are working to secure ongoing funding for this project. NSF has agreed to let us submit an unsolicited proposal, which hopefully is going in this week. DOE is also committed to ongoing support and funding. We are working with the SC team to fund returning candidates to go back, and we're working with vendors as well to send some of the original awardees back for continued efforts, because we would like to continue this pipeline. So if you're a vendor and interested, let me know. And just a little bit of background, if you're not familiar with supercomputing, SCinet is building a network, and it's building a network in a convention center somewhere in the United States. It moves around, and so it's one of the fastest and most powerful networks that built for a very short period of time. It takes a year to plan it, it takes a month to build it, it takes a week to operate it, and it takes 1 day to tear it down. So Sana got to experience that firsthand. And it really shows revolutionary applications and experiments that are kind of the hallmark of supercomputing, to really show off the latest and greatest in future technologies. It really is run 100% from volunteers from academia, government, and industry that work together to design it and to deliver that infrastructure. And industry vendors and carriers donate millions of dollars to put their gear on the floor and make sure it runs through the meeting. And these are some photos from Jason putting together just sort of a scope of cabling and junk food and various things that keep people going. And then it is 25 years in operation, so SCiNet's been being put together. This gives you kind of a scope of how the diagrams have changed over time and the complexity and the speed. And in the statistics realm, there's 89 miles of fiber optic cable that were installed in Austin, 1.63 terabytes per second of bandwidth, 22 million in vendor-loaned equipment. It supported a peak of over 6,000 wireless clients, and 130 total volunteers from 15 countries and 68 organizations worked on it. And this had 19 teams. Sana's going to talk a little bit about the teams that work on the various components of the network. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Sana, and then we can discuss some things at the end.
Cool. Do I just advance here, Marla?
Just that arrow, yeah.
Okay. All right. So again, my name is Sana Bellamine. I'm with Cenic. I'm with the core engineering group at Cenic. So I'll start with how I was first exposed to supercomputing. About a year and a half ago, I attended a perf sonar workshop. So I don't know if you've been to some of the perf sonar sessions. This is a tool that's used for performance measurement. So Eli Dart and Jason Jurowski from SCinet were teaching the class. At the end of the class, Jason asked me if I was interested in joining the monitoring tool at Supercomputing, the SCinet, as part of the SCinet team, being part of the tool that does performance measurements and monitoring. So that's how it all started for me. So what I was trying to get out of my experience with supercomputing was I really wanted to have more exposure to the process of like setting up all the steps for setting up a large conference, how to operate a large conference. I've done similar work in the past. Actually, I've been involved with the setup of this conference, but the conference I've worked on before were nothing the size of supercomputing. So I was trying to get more into like what's done for very, very large conferences, and nothing can be bigger than supercomputing. So the other goal I had in mind was had to do with my work at Cenic. So the past couple of years, most of my work at Cenic was for deploying 100 gig connections for the Cenic backbone or the Cenic sites. In general, supercomputing has a set of demos that require capacity in the 100 gigabit range. So with 100 gigabit still being relatively new, I was very interested in seeing how 100 gigabit connections perform when they're fully utilized with real-time traffic. So, and then in case when a 100 gig link is fully utilized and there are issues, I was interested in seeing what those issues were and being right there to help with the troubleshooting. So those were my main goals from the participation. So I was at Supercomputing for 2 weeks, 1 week during the setup phase, and then most of the second week during the actual conference. My duties at SCinet, so that's the thing I'd like to go over next, what I did while at SCinet. So Jason had set up 3 perf sonar servers for testing and connected them to the show floor at Supercomputing. So these perf sonar servers were connected to the network at Supercomputing in the convention center. So one of my tasks was to research working perf-sonar servers around the world and schedule regular testing from those servers around the world back to the 3 servers we have on the show floor. And then while we were doing all these tests, we were also displaying the results in a dashboard. And that dashboard became the SC15 performance dashboard, and it became publicly available. People could go and check the performance. The reason why it was important to find test points from around the world is because at Supercomputing, there's always a set of demos that are international demos. So we were trying to find test points that you would use a path as close as possible to the actual test point that will be used during the actual demo. Similarly, I worked on configuration of other monitoring tools, more like conventional tools that report on packet loss, latency, round trip, and again, similar thing. We had displays around the floor, the supercomputing floor, and we were displaying the results of all those tests to the participants. At Supercomputing, the way things work, a couple of days before the show starts, when people have their booths ready, at that point, if they need to do a large transfer as part of their demo, then at that point, like a couple of days typically before the conference starts, they start to do some real testing. And in case of issues, they open a trouble ticket with the SCinet help desk. So any tickets that were performance related will be assigned to me, and I would work on them with Jason. So part of my duties was to help with the troubleshooting and fixing any performance related issues. So that was my work on the monitoring side. At the same time, I was basically working on anything else that was needed as part of the conference setup, from cabling to setting up cameras, displays. We had to set up GoPros on the ceiling, so we had to figure out how to get that done. Making sure the cabling in the racks, our group's rack, my group's rack, were clean. Typical work related to conference setup. So next, I'd like to share some of the benefits from my experience. The SCinet team is actually multiple groups. There's an architecture group, there's a WAN group. This is the group in charge of bringing up circuits into the convention center. There's a commodity group in charge of layer 2 provisioning. There's a routing group. There's a wireless group. There's a security group. There's a monitoring group. So all of us were sitting in the same space for about 2 weeks, at least the time I was there. It was a great opportunity for me to expand my technical contacts. We were all in the same space for a long time, and we could communicate directly. So I know a lot more people now. So that was like one of the main benefits from my experience. Specifically, as Marla was saying, the five of us got scholarships to attend Supercomputing. So, for some reason, people start calling us the SCinet ladies. So I know the SCinet ladies really well now. We're becoming friends, and I met with some of the SCinet ladies at the Quill meeting recently. The other benefit from my experience at Supercomputing is, so as Marla was saying also, this is a network that's put together in about a month and operated in 1 week. It's a very fast-paced environment. So I really, I really learned how to work efficiently with multiple groups, but we have to be very quick and we have to be very efficient. At the end, in about a month, we have to put the fastest network in the world in operation. So the next thing I benefited from is, so the level of monitoring at SCinet is just amazing. The number of almost everything is monitored, from traditional monitoring like round trip, packet loss, to throughput testing, to power usage, how much power was used during the conference, to flow information. So it almost felt like there was a monitoring tool for each monitoring tool. So it was really, that was something I was impressed by. So for me, I mean, I got to know more about what monitoring tools are out there and how they can be used, especially in a conference environment. And I started thinking, how many of these tools can I go back to Cenic and suggest? I haven't had enough time to do more evaluation, but really I have some ideas now about what monitoring tools we could start using at Cenic for additional monitoring. The next thing, this is more of a general benefit I got out of my experience. So the SCinet engineering team is a team of experts. Basically, this is a team that's been doing this for 25 years, Marla, or so. And every year, they've improved on the architecture, on the tools, on the processes, and everything. So for me, it was a way of assessing my skill set, really, and identifying what areas I should be focusing on next in my career so I could go to the next technical level. So now, I know I really know what I have to learn next to get to the level of expertise that some of the SCinet engineers were at. If I'm asked to go again, definitely. I'll gladly participate again, and even suggest it to some of my colleagues, especially women colleagues at Cenic. So, so thank you for the attention. Yep. Some of the pictures, Marla. We have a...
Yeah, we'll give you something entertaining. This is the full team. I think everybody but Lauren and Wendy are in this team. So Jason and I and Mary is on the far right, but that's the team of the 5 women that were able to be there.
I just have a comment about this one.
Oh, this one?
Yes, I just have a comment about this one. So what's behind us is actually the racks where all the equipment is installed. So basically, the fastest network in the world here is behind us. So I thought that was interesting that they picked that spot for the pictures.
Well, and I'd actually never been in the NOC, which was an amazing thing to go into because it was very tidy, amazing cable management, but also they, as you said, you were packed in there. They're in there in like a heads down, everybody's working, but it was quite an interesting group. So, but that's just kind of an idea of what the floor looks like, empty, and then here's Sana just sort of in a gigantic floor. And this doesn't even really give it a scale of how big these convention centers are now. So that's what they start with before they end up with a complete facility that fills up as they do these. So anyway. Yep.
Such a great example of creating a context for gaining expertise and also for, expanding personal networks. What an opportunity that you guys have created. It's fantastic. So we have a few minutes to have questions. But in addition to posing a question, I'd like to encourage you to share, if you'd like to, an anecdote from your own career about how women are supported to enter technology, your own experience in that arena. So both questions and personal experiences relating to the topic of expanding the role for women in technology disciplines. Yes? Oh, no, the mic is coming.
This should be on. There we go.
I thought I was finally liberated, but back to the mic. So I'm Florence Hudson, and I'm an aerospace mechanical engineer. And so from the beginning, people would look at me like, are those words really coming out of your mouth? And cute is okay. I don't mind being called cute, to be honest with you, especially at this stage. But, but from the beginning, it's been like that, and it's still like that. And I can tell when I present, like some people look at me like, and I'm thinking, just close your eyes, just act like my, it's a little different voice. And it actually just happened to me again. This past year, I was at a DHS cybersecurity conference as the Chief Innovation Officer and SVP at IBM after being at Internet 2, having been a VP and CTO and all this stuff at IBM, right? And so I'm in this meeting, and they were talking about something with, virtual machines and stuff. So I raised my hand, and I said, what type of virtualization are you using? And so he's looking at me, he's going, well, it's kind, and he looked at me, he goes, I'm trying not to get too technical. Oh, I'm so glad to hear you do that. So I've learned to be very gracious about this because it's happened to me since I was a Grumman Scholar years ago. At NASA, it didn't happen because, like, I think pure scientists actually are a lot better about not caring what's on the outside. It's more what's on the inside, very honestly. And one of the women working with me did that, and she almost fell off her chair. And I was gracious, and I gave him a little more context. I said, well, are you looking at something like, is it like a VMware type of thing? Are you using containers like Docker? So I gave him some context to give him permission to talk to me like a geek, because that's who I am. I just, maybe look like I make better apple pies. So, which I make really good apple pies. So it's really constant for me. It has been, and so I'm just used to it, which is unfortunate. So what I would encourage everyone to do is just don't assume what's inside of somebody. And, like when I met a couple of guys here who were at JPL with me in 1979, we realized. Anyone here in the room? So there were two guys I was sitting with, and we realized we know the same people. We were there at the same time. It was really fun, 1979, right? And we were talking about a gentleman that we worked with that, these days it wouldn't be as unusual, but in 1979, he was having a hard time separating. His mother had passed away, and he was wearing her clothes and stuff like that. Now, at NASA, it was like, yeah, so what? He's brilliant. And I think researchers and scientists who are pure of heart can be like that. And I wish that we were all like that. I really do. So, like, I look really good on paper, but if people see me, they don't understand how those go together. And I still have, like, my cheerleading letter from high school that says Captain Flo on it. And, then I'm a rocket scientist, right? So I'm this really weird hybrid. I just used to say I was weird. Now I say I'm a hybrid because people have cars that are hybrid. So I actually have a model to go after. And I think we really should encourage hybrids, whatever the hybrid is. You're different gender diversity views. You do different things. You're a rocket scientist and a cheerleader. You make great apple pies and solid rocket boosters, And I think we just have to get more comfortable dealing with people who have diversity just inside themselves, And I always say diversity is accepting someone who's not just like you.
That's really beautifully put. Thank you. We have somebody right there, Beverly. Right there, yeah.
Oh, thank you for conducting this workshop. It was very informative. And I also like to just congratulate Cenic because I've seen so many women in leadership positions with technology in Cenic. And I don't know the organization that intimately, but what I see and the people I've interfaced with over the last year, it really gave me a sense of hope for the future, for the next generations of young ladies that are coming through, that there are organizations that, develop and support women. The other point I wanted to make was my background is software engineering, and when I came out of school, I was so blessed to have mentors, male mentors, that helped me make the transition, being the only woman in those environments. And usually after the first couple years, most women, even if they get their engineering degrees, they will transfer into marketing or some other role, but they really encouraged me. So I really like the point that you made, that the men have a role in helping to improve this trend of girls not coming into these types of careers, because for me personally, it was at every stage I had very strong mentorship from men. And I tell you, my life would be I would have been out of engineering if I did not have those people that were looking out for me and supporting me and cheering me on. And I remember my first presentation to someone that was really important, a CEO of a company, and my vice president, I used to help him with the slides. I volunteer to do anything, just because I'm curious like that. And I said, oh, he says, well, I think you should do the presentation. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm not ready for that yet. He says, yeah, you're ready. And he just encouraged me, and I did a great, he says, you know more than all these people put together.
That's great.
And I hadn't thought about it like that, but that was the thing that made me, you know, get more comfortable with it. But just having someone to encourage you and to help you with your career and making decisions about projects to get on and, you know, dealing with situations that come up, it's really fantastic when you have those advocates, and they're out there. And I just encourage all, you know, people that are in managerial positions to, you know, realize that the girls really do need, women really do need that extra support, because it is very, very difficult being the only.
Another really eloquent statement. Thank you, Beverly. And you know, Marla, that's what you're doing, right? Marla is setting up that structure to enable that to happen. Any other last question for our panelists? Yes.
My daughter's going to be embarrassed she's with me today. So, okay, we're talking about women in science. My daughter is, like you said, she's that diverse person. She can do almost anything, but she's excellent with science and math. She begged to be in a higher science class when we put her in math class. And she speaks the language. She understands. It's like instinctive to her, but she's also an artist, and she also acts, and she does a lot of things. So what would you tell someone like my daughter or other women? I'm a librarian. Should I tell my kids in my libraries why they should go into science, what they're going to see there? You've given us a glimpse, but if you could talk to my daughter today, what would you say to her?
And you can.
So honestly, my feedback is that I believe in doing what I like, because that's how I can be good, whether like it's a male-dominated field or not. So that has been my approach. So if you think it's something you like and you enjoy, just go for it, no matter what. Whether it's a male-dominated, doesn't matter to me. So that has been my approach. So I love what I'm doing. I love this networking stuff, and I'm just gonna keep doing it because I like it.
Are these mics on?
No, it's all right.
So I agree with that, but I think that we sort of isolate ourselves and say that you have to choose. And you know, my husband is a climate scientist, but he also loves history and he loves World War II. And he hasn't chosen one or the other. He is a scientist, but he also writes World War II books. I think I have an administrative assistant that works for me that loves to dance, and she's an administrative assistant during the day, and she dances at night and on the weekends. So I think that our world is very broad, and we shouldn't think, and that's why I kind of get irritated with the image of introverted, weird social skills is you can be a very extroverted and interesting person to be around and still be good at technology. I think that role, we really have to change that image. And I think, and I don't know if Sana agrees with this, but technology requires a tremendous amount of creativity. And in many cases, I'm in the midst of choosing a new logo for one of the organizations I work for. And I get to exert my artistic side through strange ways. And I think that, again, to say that there's no creativity or artistic side of technology, it's a huge field. And I think when you're designing monitoring tools, or you're designing web pages, or you're deciding, how something's represented to the end user, you're thinking about psychology, you're thinking about art, you're thinking about, visual quality, colors, those kind of things. So, and I think one of the hard things I think in society is that we have so many choices now. And even in IT, it's a huge field. It's a gigantic field. There's networking, there's software engineering, there's, I have a friend, I'm trying to get her daughter into mechanical engineering. So one of the problems, how do you expose men and women to this field, because it is so big. And I think if each of us can do some work, a number of us were talking about internship programs or We have a student assistant program. If you can think of creative ways to go into schools, I think there was a presentation the other day of the ocean network. You know, can we make kids aware of the choices and how that actually is represented? And I know we all get busy, but if each of us took a little bit of time to reach out either to schools or to students that we can influence, and that's, again, you know, part of as I've, you know, come to a point in my career where I can take some time doing this kind of stuff, and I found it incredibly fulfilling. So I think many of you will find that if you take a little time to do that. There is a lot of interest from the funding agencies about this issue and problems. There's a lot of interest from the vendors because all the vendors are suffering with this. So if you're willing to start a program, I think there's a lot of potential to do that. But, you know, again, it's been something I've just learned so much about the value of it. And so if each of us kind of took some time, and I don't have children, but I think certainly for those of you that have children, you know, keep that in mind when you're exposing your kids to things. Is, you know, are you exposing them to a broad range of things that will make them kind of consider different options? And certainly, you know, don't discourage your girls from going into math and science. But
no, that was a great question, Darla. Thank you for asking it, and we all wish your daughter the best. But of course, we'd love to have her join this profession. I believe that it's probably time to end. Let me do a time check. Is it, in fact, 11:20? Yes. Yeah, I thought it was. All right. Well, I want to thank you. I do want to end on time. I want to thank our presenters so much. And we look forward to continuing the conversation in lots of different ways. Thank you.
thank you.